of. Okay, when we go to 4, this man and a woman who called Adam and Eve, as the Bible presents, are supposed to have 2 children. So they called one Cain, they called one Abel. Okay, now according to what Cain somehow was, I think, a farmer, and Abel was what? A shepherd. Now they had to make a sacrifice, or some sort of sacrifice, which they do every time to God, showing the appreciation of whatever they've got. Now, according to the story, Cain fell out. His sacrifice fell out of perfection. It was not accepted. It was not accepted. It was rejected. How it was rejected, I'm not too sure. But he didn't feel so happy about the sort of smoke that goes up to heaven. His was, crooked. Whether the wind was blowing, I don't know. But according to the story, his sacrifice was not accepted because he took the underpath or the rubbish of his produce, and then sacrifice that instead of taking the good fruit and the good fruit of the seed, what he has generated, or what he has, he has the season, what he has plucked out of his farm, good and beautiful fruits. He chose the nasty and rotten food from his farm to sacrifice that to God, whilst the Abel chose a very nice and a beautiful sheep among his sheep, what was very good and beautiful and nice, and sacrificed that. So his sacrifice was accepted, and Cain was rejected. And Cain was envious of his brother, that he killed his brother Abel. Now, this is what I was trying to find out, that okay, if this was the case whereby these 2 brothers, one killed the other, God, the omniscient God, knowing everything, never knew what has happened, but was hearing the voice of who? Hearing the voice of Abel calling out for him. And he had to come out and say, ask Cain, where is his brother? Now Cain then had to give a cheeky answer by saying that, am I my brother's keeper? And I cannot do, as you can, if you ask me, what do you want me to, am I my brother's keeper? And God has to then realize, God to come to say that, why did you do that? That you end the life of your own brother. God did not curse this Cain who killed his brother. Rather, he asked that anybody, as Cain ran away, or was moving away, or shifting away from the family, he says, anybody who touches Cain, 70 times 7 of punishment, will rather come upon him. So somehow he set boundaries that nobody should ever touch him. He should be left alone. And indeed, I think Cain lived as long, half family, he had children, and he ended up, having his own, family, and multiplied. The multiplication went on. Now it shows that somehow, in this case, Adam and Eve then had to give birth to other children. Seth came into place, and whether he gave birth to daughters, that those daughters were, it was one of those daughters that was picked for Cain. It wasn't written that. It shows that Cain went out and took wife from another place. Where that wife came from, or where those people came from, that the Bible does not explain much about it. Now, I'm not sure about how the Quran reveals these things, but in the Quran, as it says about the surah, if I probably go in deep, I probably will discover things that the Quran has got the bits and pieces that does not really say anything regarding, or I have not yet found where it's trying to follow in sequence of saying that 2 men were created and they have to go somewhere. One had to end up somewhere and choose. It says that with a drop of a sperm in surah, in surah, let's say surah, the Roman numerals of XVI verse 4, XVI verse 4, it sort of reveal somehow that XVI verse 4, which is like surah, let's say surah 16 verse 4, it says like the sperm, a drop of a sperm, God created man out of a drop of a sperm, which I can relate that the Quran is trying to say something to do with pregnancy, a woman and a man coming together and having sex, and that instant the sperm going into the woman egg and generating a human, that kind of thing. That process is God making the creation there. And it goes further even in other other verses like Surah XXIII, which is Surah 23 verse 14. It says, then we made the sperm into a clot of congealed blood. Then that clot we made a fetus lump. Then we made out of that lump bones, clothed the bones with flesh. If you go back to 12 of Surah 23 SS Roman numeral XXIII, it says, man we did create from what? Clay. So it is like the same definition of what the Bible says, that out of dust that God created man. The Quran also agrees that out of clay, or let's say dust, the ground, that man was created. So the first man was created out of that. And then the Quran always go further to reveal, like the generations that came out of this first man. That was where it didn't end there. God keep creating, that God was still creating through the sperm and the female and the male coming together. God was still creating. It was God's hands creation. In the Bible also it reveals that God is the one who gave children. So creation was coming in that sense. But it does relate. They too have a similar approach in all respect. They do have the similar approach. It's sad that somehow they disagree in so many things. When you go to the writings of Yehoshua, that's the Jewish man today called Jesus, you can see that it is widely believed in the Quran how he was exchanged on the cross, and he never got killed on the cross or anything, as the Bible reveals. It also reveals that somehow the promise of the angel to Mary at that time is different from what is written in the Bible of the promise, which all those little things somehow makes both the Quran and stand differently. Yet they are all Abrahamic, descendants. So you cannot think of it as if they are supposed to be enemies, but they are enemies. It is written clearly in the Quran somewhere, which somehow reveals that the what do you call it? The Christian were seen as infidels, because at a point in time they used to fight. There was when the Christians were there that the Muslims felt that they have to take control of that over the world, and this thing went on and on. So at some stage it is historically accepted that the Quran has been an enemy, or has stood in some sense against Christians, and that they've got the advice which gives them the right